Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 3. Vedantic Teachings in Theory and Practical. When the Swami's visit was drawing to a close, his friend in Almora invited him to give a lecture in Hindi. He consented to make the attempt for the first time. He began slowly and soon warmed to his theme and found himself building his phrases and almost his words as he went along. Those best acquainted with the difficulties and limitations of the Hindi language, still undeveloped as a medium for oratory, expressed their opinion that the personal trump that had been achieved by Swamiji and that he had proved by his mastery use of Hindi that the language had in it undreamt of possibilities of development in the direction of oratory. Another lecture was delivered at the English Club in English, of which a brief summary follows. The subject was Vedic teaching in theory and practical. Vedic teaching in theory and practice. A short historical sketch of the rise of the worship of the tribal god and its spread through the conquest of the other tribes was followed by an account of the Vedas. Their nature, character, and teachings were briefly touched upon. Then Swami spoke about the soul, comparing the Western method, which seek for the solution of vital and religious mysteries in the outside world, with the Eastern method, which finding no answer in the nature outside turns its inquiry within. He justly claimed for his nation. He justly claimed for his nation the glory of being the discoverers of the introspective method peculiarly to themselves, and of having given to the humanity the priceless treasure of spirituality which was the result of that method alone. Passing from passing from this theme naturally to so dear to the heart of a Hindu, the Swami reached the climax of his power as a spiritual teacher when he described the relationship of the soul to God. Its inspiration after and real unity with God. For some time it seemed as though the teacher, his words, his audience, and the spirit pervading them all were one. No, no longer was there any consciousness of I and thou, of this or that. The different unit collected their very for the time being lost and merged in the spiritual radiance which emanated so powerfully for a great teacher and held them all more than the spellbound. Those that have frequently heard him will recall similar experiences when he ceased to be Swami Vivekananda lecturing to critical and attentive hearers, when all details and personalities were lost, names and forms disappeared, only the spirit remaining, untying the speaker, hearer, and spoken word. Next, Bhakti. Lecture delivered at Saikoti, Punjab. In response to the invitation from Punjab and Kashmir, the Swami Vivekananda traveled through those parts. He stayed in Kashmir for over a month and his work there was very much appreciated by the Maharaja and his brothers. He then spent a few days in the visiting Muri, Rawalpindi, and Jammu, and at each of these places he delivered lectures. Subsequently, he visited Salkoti and lectured twice, once in English and once in Hindi. The subject of the Swamiji Hindi lecture was Bhakti, a summary of which translated into English and is given below. The various religions that extend in the world or that exist in the world, although they differ in the forms of worship they take, are really one. In some places, the people build temples and worship in them. In some, they worship fire. In others, they prostrate prostrate themselves into idol, while there are many who do not believe at all in God. All are true, for if you look at the real spirit, the real religion, and the truths In each of them, they are all alike. In some religions, God is not worshipped. Now, his existence is not believed in, but good and worthy men are worshipped as if they were gods. The example worth of these citations in this case is Buddhism. Bhakti is everywhere, whether directed to God or to noble persons. Upasana is in the form of bhakti is everywhere supreme, and bhakti is more easily attained than jnana. The latter requires favorable circumstances and strenuous practice. You cannot be properly practiced unless a man is physically very healthy and free from all worldly attachment. But bhakti can be more easily practiced by person in every condition of life. Shandilya Rishi, who wrote about bhakti, says the extreme love for God is bhakti. Prahlad speaks of the same effect. In the man, if a man does not get food one day, he is troubled. If his son dies, and how agno, agonizing, how agonizing it is to him. The true bhakti feels the same pangs in his heart when he yearns after God. The great quality of bhakti is that it cleans the mind and firmly establishes bhakti for the Supreme Lord is alone sufficient to purify the mind. O God, thy name are innumerable, but in every name thy power is manifested, and every name is pregnant with deep and mighty significance. We should think of God always and not consider time and place for doing so. The different names under which God is worshipped are apparently different. One thinks one thing that his method of worship God is the most efficacious, and another thinks that his is more potent process of attaining salvation. But look at the true basis of all, and it is one, the Shaiva called Shiva, and the most powerful, and Vaishnavas hold to their all powerful Vishnu. The worshippers of Devi will not yield to any of their ideas that their Devi is the most omnipotent power in the universe. Leave inimical thoughts aside if you want to have permanent bhakti. Hatred is a thing which greatly impedes the course of bhakti, and the man who hates none reaches God. Even then, the devotees for one who owns the idea is necessary. Hanuman says, Vishnu and Ram, I know, are one and the same, but after all, the lotus eyed Ram is my best treasure. The peculiar tendencies with which a person is born must remain with him. That is the chief reason why the world cannot be of one religion, and God forbidden that there should be one religion only, for the religion would then be chaos and not a cosmos. A man must follow the tendencies peculiar to himself, and if he gets a teacher to help him to advance along with own lines, he will progress. We should let a person go the way he intend to go, but if we try to force him into another path, he will lose what he has already attained and will become worthless. As the face of one person does not resemble that of another, so the nature of one differs from the another. And why should he not be allowed to act accordingly? A river flows in a certain direction, and if you direct the course into the regular channel, the current becomes more rapid and the force is increased. But try to divert it from its proper course, and you will see the result. The volume as well as the force will be lessened. This life is very important, and it therefore ought to be guided in the way one's tendency prompts him. In India, there was no enmity, and every religion was left unmolested. So, religion has lived. It ought to be remembered by quarrels about religion arises from the thinking that one alone has the truth, and whoever does not believe as one does is a fool, while another think that the other is a hypocrite. For if he were not one, he would follow him. If God wished that people should follow one religion, why have so many religions sprung up? Methods have been vainly tried to force one religion upon another, everyone. Even when the sword was lifted to make all members, all people follow one religion, history tells us that 10 religions sprang up in its place. One religion cannot suit all. Man is the product of two forces, action and reaction, which many which make him think if such forces did not exist or did not exercise a man's mind, he would be incapable of thinking. Man is a creature who thinks. Manusya is a being with manas, that is mind. And as soon as this thinking power goes, he becomes no better than an animal. Who would like such a man? God forbidden that any such state should come upon the people of India. Variety in unity is necessary to keep man as man. Variety ought to be preserved in everything. For as long as there is variety, the world will exist. Of course, variety does not merely mean that merely mean that is that one is small and the other is great. But if all play their parts equally well in their respective position in life, the variety is still preserved. In every religion, there have been men good and able, thus making the religion to which they belong worthy to respect. And as there are such people in every religion, there ought to be no hatred for any sect whatsoever. Then the question may be asked, should we respect that religion which advocates vice? The answer will be certainly in the negative, and such a religion ought to be expelled at once because it is productive of harm. All religion is to be based upon morality, and personal purity is to be counted superior to dharma. In this connection, it ought to be known the achara, that achara means purity inside and outside. External purity can be attained by cleansing the body with water and other things which are recommended in the Shastras. The internal purity is to be purified by not speaking falsehood, by not drinking, by not doing immoral acts, and by doing good to others. If you do not commit any sin, if you do not tell lie, if you do not drink, gamble, or commit thief, it is good. But that is the only your duty, and you cannot be applauded for it. Some service to others is also to be done. As you do good to yourself, as so you must do good to others. Here I shall say something about food regulations. All the old customs have faded away, and nothing but a vague notion of not eating with this man and not eating with that man has been left among our countrymen. Purity by touching is the only relic left of the good rules laid down hundreds of years ago. Three kinds of food are forbidden in the Shastras. First, the food that is by its very nature defective has garlic and onion. If the man eat too much of them, it creates passion, and he may be led to commit immoralities hateful both to God and man. Secondly, food contaminated by external impurities. We ought to select some place quite neat, clear, in which to keep our food. Third, we should avoid eating food touched by a wicked man because contact with such produces bad ideas in us. Even if one or be a son of Brahmin, but is profligate and immoral in his habit, we should not eat food from his hand. But the spirit of these observances is gone. What is left is this, that we cannot eat from the hand of any man who is not the highest caste, even though he is the most he be the most wise and holy person. The disgrade of those old rules is ever to be found in the confectionery shops. If you look there, you will find flies hovering all over the confectionery, and the dust from the road blows upon the sweetmeats, and the confectioner himself in a dress that is not very clean and neat. Purchaser should declare with one voice that they will not buy sweets unless they are kept in glass cases in the halwai shop. That would have the salutary effect of preventing flies from conveying cholera and other plagues germs to the sweets. We ought to improve, but instead of improving, we have gone back. Manu says that we should not spit in water, but we throw all sort of filth into rivers. Considering all these things, we find that the purification of one outer self is very necessary. Shastrakaras, the Shastrakaras knew that very well, but now the real spirit of this observance of purity about food is lost, and the latter only remains. Thieves, drunken criminals can be out our caste fellows, but if a good and noble man eat food with the person of the low caste, who is quite as respectable as himself, he will be outcasted and lost forever. This custom has been the bane of our country. It ought therefore to be distinctly understood that sin is incurred by coming in contact with sinner, and nobility in the company of the good person, and keeping aloof from the wicked is the external purification. The internal purification is a task much more severe. It consists in speaking the truth, serving the poor, helping the needy, etc. Do we always speak the truth? Which happens is often this. People go to the house of the rich person from some business for some business, so their own and flatter him by calling him benefactor of the poor and so forth, even though that man may cut the throat of the poor coming to his house. What is this? Nothing but falsehood. And it is this that pollutes the mind. It is therefore truly said that whatever a man says who has purified his inner self for 20 years without entertaining a single vicious idea during that period is sure to come true. This is the power of the truth, and the one who has cleaned both the inner and outer self is alone capable of bhakti. But the beauty of is that bhakti itself cleans the mind to the great extent. Although the Jews, Mohammedan, and Christians do not set so much importance upon the excessive external purification of the body as the Hindus do, still they have it in some form or other. They find that to a certain extent it is always required. Always among the Jews, idol worship is commended, but they had a temple in which was kept a chest which they called an ark, in which the table of the law were presented or preserved. Above the chest were two figures of angels with wings outstretched, between which the divine presence was supposed to be manifested itself as the cloud. That temple has a long since been destroyed, but the new temple are made exactly after the old temple, and in the chest religious book are kept. The Roman Catholics and the Greek Christians have idol worship in certain forms. The image of Jesus and that of his mother are worshipped. Among Protestants, there is no idol worship, and yet they worship God in the personal form, which may be called idol worship in another way. Among Parsis and Iranis, fire worship. Fire worship is carried on to a great extent. Among Mohammedans, the Prophet and the great noble person are worshipped, and they turn their face towards the Kaaba when they pray. These things show that a man at a first stage of the religious development have to take use of something external. When the inner self becomes purified, they turn to more abstract conception. When the jiva is sought to be united with Brahman, It is best when meditation is practiced it ins mediocre. Repetition of name is the lowest form and external worship is the lowest of the lower. But it should be distinctly understood that even in practicing the last there is no sin. Everybody ought to do what he is able to do, and if he be dissuaded from that, he will do it in some other way in order to attain his end. So we should not speak ill of a man who worships idol. He is in the stage of growth and therefore must have them. Wise men should try to help forward such men and get them to do better, but there is no use of in quarreling about this various sort of worship. Some person worship God for the sake of obtaining wealth, others because they want to have a son, and they think themselves bhagavatas, devotees. This is no bhakti, and they are not true bhagavatas. When a sadhu comes who professes that he can make gold, they run to him and they still consider themselves Bhagavatas. It is not bhakti if we worship God with the desire for the sun. It is not bhakti if we worship God with the desire to be rich. It is not bhakti even if we have a desire for heaven. It is not bhakti if a man worship with the desire of being saved from the fortune or torture of the hell. Bhakti is not the outcome of the fear or greediness. He is the true Bhagavat who says, "O God, I do not want the beautiful wife. I do not want knowledge and salvation. The life, let me be born and die hundreds of times. What I want is that I should be ever engaged in thy service. It is at this stage, and when the man sees God in everything, and everything is God, in God, that he attains perfect bhakti. It is then that he says Vishnu incarnation in everything, from the microbe to Brahma. And it is then that he sees God manifesting himself in everything. It is it is then that he feels that there is nothing without God, and it is then and then alone that, thinking himself to be the most significant of all the beings, he worships God with the true spirit of the bhakta. We then leave we then leaves tirthas and external forms of worship far behind him. He sees every man to be the most perfect temple. Bhakti is desired or described in several ways in the Shastras. We say that God is a father. In the same way, we call him mother and so on. This relationship are conceived in order to strengthen bhakti in us, and they make us feel nearer and dearer to God. Hence these names are justification or justificable in one way, and that is that the words are simply words of endearment, the outcome of the found love which a true bhagavata feels for God. Take the story of Radha and Krishna in Rasa Leela. The story simply amplifies the truth spirit of bhakti, because no love in the world exceeds that existing between a man and a woman. When there is such intense love, there is no fear, no other attachment save that one which binds that pair in an inseparable and all absorbing bond. But with regard to parents, love is accompanied with fear due to the reverence we have for them. Why should we care whether God created anything or not? What have we to do with the fact that He is our preserver? He is only our beloved, and we should adore Him, devoid of all thoughts of fear. A man loves God only when he has no other desire, and when he thinks of nothing else, and when he is mad after him. That love which a man has for his beloved can illustrate the love we ought to have for God. Krishna is the God, and Radha loves him. Read those books which describe that story, and then you can imagine the way you should love God. But how many understand this? How can people who are vicious to their very core and have no idea of what morality is understand all this? When people drive all sort of worldly thoughts from their minds and live in the clear moral and spiritual atmosphere, it is then that they can understand the abstract set of thoughts, even if they be uneducated. But how few are there of the nature? There is not a single religion which cannot be perverted by man. For example, he may think that the Atman is quite separate from the body, and so, when committing sin with body, his Atman is unaffected. If religion were truly followed, there would not have been a single man, whether Hindu, Mohammedan or Christian, who would not have been all purity. But men are guided by their own nature, whether good or bad. There is no gainsaying that. But in the world, there are always some who get intoxicated when they hear of God and shed tears of joy when they read of God. Such men are true bhaktas. At the initial stage of religious development, a man thinks of God as his master and himself as his servant. He feels indebted to him for providing of his daily wants and so forth. Put such thought aside. There is but one attractive power, and that is God. And it is in obedience to the attractive power that the sun and the moon and everything else move. Everything in this world, whether good or bad, belongs to God. Whatever occurs in our life, whether good or bad, is bringing us to Him. One man kills another because of some selfish purpose, but the motive behind is love, whether for himself or for anyone else. Whether we do good or evil, the propeller is love. When a tiger kills a buffalo, it is because he or his cubs are hungry. God is love personified. He is apparent in everything. Everybody is being drawn to him, whether to know it or not. When a woman loves her husband, she does not understand that it is the divine in her husband that is the great attractive power. The God of love is the one thing to be worshipped. So long as we think of Him only as the creator and preserver, we can offer Him external worship. But when we get beyond all that and think Him to be love incarnation, seeing Him in all things and all things in Him, it is then that supreme bhakti is attained.